Now, welcome to another edition of Marvel Cinematic Universe Rankings, or MCU Rankings, the first in quite some time.
That's because I wasn't in charge.
And also the first one on this channel. Speaking of you, we will be doing these together henceforth. They started on my other channel like over a year ago. We got through phase one, and then it kind of ended, thanks to me.
That's a nice way of putting it.
No excuses, it just was all me, so... But anyway, before we even start, we should kind of recap. You don't even know what the rankings for Phase 1 are. I bet most people watching this who were watching that original series have forgotten as well. So let's take a gander. Down there in 6th place, we have Incredible Hulk, 2.75. Iron Man 2 at 3.28. And just above that is the first Thor movie, 3.29. Then Captain America, First Avenger, 3.92. In 2nd place, Avengers, 4.17. And 1st place, Iron Man, 4.23. What do you think?
I'd probably shuffle a couple of things. I think I liked Avengers probably more than Iron Man.
I am kind of surprised. That's the biggest surprise for me. I think everything there makes...
Thor more than Captain America.
Well, I like Thor more than Captain America, but that's kind of a personal... I can understand why one was above the other, but personally, Thor should be number one. But seriously, it kind of surprises me Avengers finished behind Iron Man. I think Avengers is such an iconic film, that first Avengers. So I'm not saying Iron Man 1 isn't iconic as well, but really kind of thought Avengers would take the crown in Phase 1. Instead, it is 2nd place. All right, so now let's move on to the results for Iron Man 3 from roughly a year ago, where we'll see that 5% of people gave it 5 stars, 33% went with 4 stars, 46% of people gave it 3 stars and thought it was about average, which left 12% to give it 2 stars, and a final 4% to give it 1 star, saying it is terrible.
Sorry, the cats have the zoomies.
Yes, as usual, when we try to record, they decide to start running around. And so when we do all the math here, that means Iron Man 3 ends up with an average score of 3.23, which puts it 0.05 of a point behind Iron Man 2. How do you feel about that one? Right ahead of the Incredible Hulk still holds up the bottom. I kind of like the Incredible Hulk. I'm surprised it's...
Yeah, I like it too. It's only jarring because they ended up having to switch actors, I suppose.
Yeah,
I think... they never came back to, what happened with Betty and
the leader until now.
Yeah, I heard he's
going to be in Thunderbolts, I believe.
That he's also probably going to be the bad guy from She-Hulk.
Abomination kind of fell off the planet till She-Hulk as well.
Yeah, they just dropped everything from it.
Yeah. But I mean, Abomination just got locked up, so it's not weird that he isn't anywhere else unless he breaks out like every villain always does in comic books. But anyway, as for Iron Man 3, let's get to some of the comments, starting with the top-rated comment, as we always do, which this time came to us from Matthew Chai all those years ago, who said this.
1 year ago. Wow, you haven't done these for a year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. It's been a year.
I liked it. I liked how Tony was suffering from PTSD from the events in The Avengers. In the fights in Tennessee, it was cool to see Tony be more creative since his arsenal of weaponry is limited and broken. And then in the final battle, he summons an entire army of Iron Man suits, which is still one of my favorite moments in the franchise. But that said, there are so many problems with it. The Mandarin twist wasn't well done and was pretty disappointing, and the whole moving on theme the movie was trying to implement was really stupid. At the end, when Tony says that he's done and was willing to spend his time with Pepper and proceeded to destroy all his suits, I thought that was the last time we would ever see Tony. He doesn't die, he just retires quietly to have a more peaceful life, and I thought it was a risky but nice way to end the story of probably the most popular Marvel character at the time. But then he just reappears in Age of Ultron with a bunch of other suits. So the whole movie was kind of pointless.
Yeah, I mean, he touches on a lot of points here that I know other comments are going to touch on. And yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that, more or less. And since that kind of covered the whole movie, we'll probably kind of shuffle on to other comments that go into specific elements that he's talking about here. So, yeah. But no, I mean, I agree. There are really good things about Iron Man 3, and then there are some really head-scratching things. The cats agree as well.
Next comment is from Solidus0079. I enjoyed some aspects of it. The James Bond element of a suitless Stark snooping around was a nice change of pace, and of course, Robert Downey Jr. was great as usual, but the Mandarin plot twist was a giant whiff, and Killian was about as forgettable as a villain could be. I had to refresh my memory on what his name was just now. One of the few MCU movies I haven't bothered revisiting. It earns a solid C in my book.
I think the Tony Stark thing is kind of a double-edged sword because it is called Iron Man. And I know
he's taking out the man.
Yes. Well, Tony Stark is obviously Iron Man, but it's kind of like, okay, it's cool to see Tony Stark be, ingenuitive and, do things without the suit and kind of grapple with all of these, the PTSD and all that. That's all well and good, but I think a lot of people, when they go to Iron Man, they want to see Tony in the suit. So it is kind of this...
Well, if Jarvis can just do it, or he can operate it remotely, then Robert Downey Jr. never has to retire.
Yeah, I mean...
would have never had to give up the role.
Well, yeah, plus we see him remotely controlling them all the time, and it's like, well, why does he ever get in the suit? What's the point of ever being in the suit other than perhaps you physically needing to be on location at some place?
There was one jarring moment for me. Remember, we just rewatched it.
Yeah, we rewatched it in preparation. We'll be doing that for all of them down the line, too, so...
My biggest problem, there's the airplane scene where Iron Man goes because he's going to go and save the president, and he's fighting the extremist dude.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense because, I've seen the movie before. I'm very well aware that Tony's actually not in that suit of armor because it gets hit by a truck after he saves all the people and falls apart, and it's a nice, haha, he wasn't in the suit moment. But during the fight, the extremist dude grabs the Iron Man suit, he grabs the arm, and he starts burning it, and Robert Downey Jr. in the Iron Man suit, it looks like, at the time, because that bait and switch is going, like he's burning, and he's not even there.
He's trying to fool the extremist guy.
He doesn't need to fool the extremist guy. There's no reason that he needs to fool the extremist guy.
Okay, so he's trying to fool the audience.
Yes. They're trying to fool the audience. That is the only reason to
do that.
So that when he gets smacked by the truck later, and the suit falls apart, everyone's like, oh, ha, 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 ha. But they overplayed their hand a little bit on that. Yeah,
because in all reality, it doesn't matter to extremist guy. That's what we're going to call him. Extremist guy doesn't need to know whether he's in the suit or not. It's a threat to him either way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes no difference whether the fire is working or not. He could have just assumed this suit has more reinforced anti-heat plating because Tony knows these guys give off extreme heat.
Yeah. Yeah, yep. I agree. It's kind of one of those...
Overplayed.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and Killian was a whiff. He was...
Kill who?
Yeah, exactly. He was dancing emo Spider-Man from Spider-Man 3. That's what he was to me. I'm stealing Pepper. Why?
Because I can.
Because I can. Because she's a trophy. Why are you giving your trophy extremist powers? So she can blast the heck out of you later? Come on
Yes. Now. It makes a...
I'm just saying, if you're kidnapping the princess from the castle, don't hand them a machine gun.
Your princess is in another castle?
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You're kidnapping somebody else's... love interest.
Significant other,
because you want her for yourself, and you give her superpowers?
Makes sense.
I understand that you're like, I need to get Tony motivated.
Yeah, that's what it really was,
You're a tech genius. You could fake that footage. You could put her in harm's way some other way and say, hey, this is going to happen, and only Extremis will save her, but Extremis, You could threaten her without being like, yeah, I also already ejected it. Because by the time he showed up, he wouldn't have been able to save her with his science anyhow that way.
Stop being smarter than our villains. You're ruining it. You have to be
dumber than them. But the villain's supposed to be smarter than me.
Yes. The writing is supposed to be smarter.
Okay. Moving on. Vicious Joe. 2 stars for me. Mandarin was shite. The fact that Tony basically flipped the Mandarin in national TV and told him to come get me at my house if you dare, and not even a single police unit was there preparing for anything, and that he didn't have all of his 42 Iron Man suits flying around defending the house. I'll never get past that. Complete stupidity. Oh, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you can remotely control your suits. You can have them autopilot. You tell the Mandarin, come get me, and then you just, sit back and buy Pepper a teddy bear.
Well, and didn't he say, Jarvis, put the house on high alert?
Yeah, you would
think. But it took Maya going, hey, look, the TV's showing a rocket coming at your house. What?
Yeah, Jarvis was on break. He was sipping some tea.
Jarvis is taking a nap.
Yeah, Jarvis, he gets breaks too. AI or not, he gets breaks.
Union mandate.
Jeez. Yes, he's unionized. The Iron Man suits are unionized, so they were on break as well. Everybody was on break.
Everyone was on break. They weren't really preparing. And I think that makes a good point.
No, it makes a great point, yeah.
It makes so many good points.
Yeah. It's one of those things you're not... Again, it's like you need to write not only your villains well, but your heroes also need to be intelligent. It's hard to write a good story because you have to make both sides, intelligent. You have to make... It's like, I've said it before, it's like watching a well-played game of chess. Both sides need to be trying to win, and one side needs to just slightly outsmart the other side. That's what a good story is, not when both sides are stupid and the least dumb wins.
Ah, that's coming from a man who played Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me. No, I would never be playing Sherlock Holmes. I'm not that. You're the one who spots the clues. I'm just the one who puts it together.
I'm a clue spotter.
You are a clue spotter. You spot things that I'm like, how did you see that? And then I'm like, well, maybe. See, we're like Holmes and Watson. I think I'm Watson, but that's okay.
Hooray! All right, this comes from Clay. I loved it. It's one of my favorite MCU films. I really didn't like Age of Ultron since it did away with most of Tony's character development. I do think Iron Man 3 is one of the exceptions to a hero is only as good as his villain. It was more of a person versus self story. I think all of Iron Man's are person versus self stories.
More than a lot of the other films are.
He needs a little more fixing up than some of them.
Yeah, he's a broken man in general, so it's kind of easier to have...
Right, he started full of pride in Iron Man 1,
Yeah.
had to overcome that to be a little more selfless and to care and change things. Then in Iron Man 2, he was dying and developed crazy drinking problems and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, I think him and, Steve are the two characters that have the most... I mean, the whole first couple phases are really about that,
Iron
right?
Man and Captain America, yeah.
How they kind of flip. How you have Captain America like, oh, I got to do it myself. And then you got Cap, I'm going to do it for my country, and I'm going to follow orders, too. In the end, you have Cap, I got to do it myself, and Iron Man, like, I don't want the responsibility, I'm going to follow orders. I think it's brilliant how they did it.
It is brilliant. But it's sad that somehow then that ended up with Thor being teamed
Yeah.
with Hulk, which just made Thor get stupid.
Yeah, Thor,
But whatever.
Thor, I
Let's
think,
not
was
even
supposed to be
hear
the
that.
third wheel of that story, and they just kind of, they realized after Dark World, people like funny Thor, and they just full-on embraced it. But we're talking about the wrong movie again, because that's what we do, right? We get off topic. But no, I agree. Iron Man is really more about Tony than some of the other superhero films are. They're about the villain they have to face, and his is more of a personal journey, for better or worse.
The Fish Nerd says, I like that name. Least of the Iron Man movies, the aspect that Tony's having PTSD is fine, and I like the dynamic with Jurassic World Kid. But the disappointment of the fake Mandarin combined with random Pepper has fire and regeneration powers now, but oh wait, we took them away off screen. It just kind of makes it underwhelming and convoluted. Gave it 2 stars because it really doesn't stand up to the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Tony took her powers away. Like, he's like,
Did
oh, I
she
can
not?
fix that.
Just she didn't want them?
And that's what I'm assuming.
And because there probably is the threat of explosion.
But would you really not want those powers? I mean, just to have your boyfriend, soon-to-be husband, is
Depends
Tony Stark,
on what
Iron
the
Man?
downsides are. They didn't explore fully the downsides. Like, maybe did Killian possibly give her extremic powers because of the fact that, I'm going to go a little, sorry, everybody. But if, let's say, they're getting friendly, what if... Well, he says you have to regulate. I feel like when they get too emotional and stuff,
okay.
they get too hot. They start with the heat. So maybe he needed a girlfriend who could also withstand incredible hot temperatures. I don't know.
Kind of like Hulk and Betty in
Right.
in Incredible Hulk.
Right.
Hulk
Where
could get a little
he's
too
like,
excited.
things might get too real. Yeah.
Okay, I guess that could be. But I mean, Tony made it sound like, oh, I can fix that in an afternoon. You think he would figure out the heat problem too?
Right.
I don't know.
They just didn't explain it. So then I have to make up explanations for it that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
They just wanted to make the joke about a fiery redhead.
Jeez.
Or maybe I did.
You did.
Sorry. Michael Bowers. Very underrated. I love how this movie deals with the aftermath of Tony's experience in the Avengers, especially his PTSD and realization the universe is much bigger than he previously realized. The film felt like Tony's story, very similar to the first one. Not quite as good as the first film, but much, much better than the second, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do like the humbling of Tony Stark. I mean, that's really, it is kind of a pivotal moment in his journey that he kind of realizes, like, I can't solve every problem. This is the kind of the start of that realization, I think.
That leads him into the Ultron rabbit hole.
Yeah, that leads him to Ultron and Civil War and so on. Yeah, this is the beginning of like I said, the humbling of Tony Stark. So I think it's an important movie in his journey.
It's just sad that they took such an important story and they wrapped the Mandarin and Killian around it.
Yeah, and then they just kind of made them worthless.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll talk more about the Mandarin. There's probably a very Mandarin-specific comment that we've selected. I don't remember everyone because we kind of pick them at random and then shuffle them about. But I think we made sure to ramble about the Mandarin here in a minute.
Aiden Pack. I feel like it's a casual movie that you can watch with your family if you want a fun superhero movie, but overall it doesn't really drive the MCU plot forward that much. One thing I found unique about the movie, however, is that we see Tony struggling with the suit throughout the movie. It really does offer a unique sense of tension that we didn't get in the other Iron Man movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, with him not in the suit, it's kind of like with him having problems with the suit, instead of this just being him, Iron Man, save the day kind of thing, it's Tony has to save the day.
Well, and it's interesting because it shows that he's still innovating. Because obviously he knows how to make an Iron Man suit, but he's trying new things.
Yeah.
With this suit that will come to him and that he can control remotely.
Yeah.
It's a brand new suit model for him, and it's showing his innovation and his trial and error processes that he is still, as he calls himself, a mechanic.
Yes, he is.
Maria Alexander says, I love this movie. The airplane scene was fantastic. Iron Man 3 really shows the best of Tony Stark. The Mandarin twist didn't bother me since I was not familiar with the character in the comics.
Yeah, I think it was... I love the airplane scene. I think that's really... I know, it's really cool. I mean...
It is. It is a clever
yeah.
solution that he came up with. Showing that he's still thinking on the ball, that he is, like we just said, innovative, smart guy, creative.
Yeah, a genius, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Genius, playboy, philanthropist, billionaire, yeah.
Are we talking about the Mandarin yet, or are we still holding out?
I think there's more comments coming. Well, we'll hold out on the Mandarin, but I agree. I think the movie gets a lot of hate, and I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's a fun movie. And I think there's some good moments in there, and certainly that airplane scene is one of them.
Whitman Paxton, despite the plot twist involving the Mandarin, we got some of the best Iron Man action in the MCU, as well as a chilling performance from Ben Kingsley. If only he was the true Mandarin.
All right, unleash the Mandarin talk.
Okay, first off, when this comments and everything came out, Shang-Chi wasn't a thing.
No, not even on the radar. Yeah.
The actual Mandarin, the leader
Yes.
of the Ten Rings, that
is first seen in Iron Man 1.
First seen in Iron Man 1. It is the banner on the wall behind his hostage video.
Yep.
We know that the Ten Rings existed.
It's a real thing, yeah.
And it was both weird and clever that they chose to go this direction with it. That
Yes.
but you have to wonder, why would the real Mandarin let you guys make a fake Mandarin?
I don't know if a lot. I mean, by coming out and stopping the fake Mandarin, he's revealing being the real Mandarin.
Well, and we know he does show up
there's-
at the post-credity things
Yes.
where the true leader
Yes.
doesn't show his face but exerts his influence.
I would say probably the biggest disappointment is I'm not a huge Mandarin comic book fan. I've never really read much Iron Man from the comics, to be completely fair and honest here. I mean, mostly I know him from Avengers books rather than reading just Iron Man books.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mandarin is not a big deal to me personally. Now, that said, I understand what it's like to have a character you really like screwed over. Exactly. So I get that aspect. For me, the most disappointing part is Ben Kingsley was just nailing it. I mean, he's just like this comment said, he's chilling, he is haunting, you're terrified of this guy, and then he turns out to be, Trevor.
See, that was, again, part of the problems. They didn't make Aldrich Killian enough of a threat or enough of a good character that I understood. I'm like, oh, he is the villain. He just seemed like a D-bag most of the time, dancing around, he's doing his emo Spider-Man dance.
Yes.
He was just like, oh, yeah, so that D-bag who just is going to fight Tony over his girlfriend.
Yes.
That was the thing.
I mean, is
they
it a
didn't
clever...
even press on the plot points enough about how important Extremis was to him. It was, for some reason, all about him stealing Pepper. That was the main point.
I think it's clever, but wasn't done well enough to have, you're trying to hide the fact that you're doing these experimental things and you're blowing people up, essentially, and blowing up, people in certain areas, and you make it look like a terrorist act to kind of completely distract from what is actually going on. That's a clever idea, but it's not executed so well that you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
I'm doing all this as a threat to the American people and I'm throwing all this on my fake Mandarin because my big plan is to assassinate the president because the vice president will greenlight my Extremis.
Yes, because his daughter is missing a limb.
Yes, because his daughter would benefit from Extremis.
Yes.
And while that plot is actually pretty decent,
it's not
really showcased very well. You start thinking everything's kind of random, and you're like, what is going on? And they give you 2 seconds to the end, showing the vice president, showing his daughter. I'm like, okay, but then he didn't make it seem like it was really about him anyway. He was still more concerned with, I wanted Pepper, and that seemed more of the plot to him and more of his drive than actually caring about this product he's trying to push.
Well, I also like that, Tony calls the vice president, or was it, Rhodey? I think it was Tony. Yeah,
Tony calls the vice president.
I mean, let's be real about that. If you can call the vice president, that's going to be on record, right? So they're gonna know, like,
Well, that's
there's
why
this.
they showed him being arrested at the end.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, even if everything goes well, you got to hope that both Tony and Rhodey are killed, because otherwise they can out you. Be like, hey, we tried to call the vice president and you guys didn't do anything, and like there's gonna be a record of that call. The Secret Service guy gave him the phone, so it's like that's already gonna cast a shadow of doubt on the vice president,
Right,
even if his
that
plan
was
succeeds.
another weird
It was
mistake.
just, it was in there because they wanted to show his granddaughter at Christmas. Like, oh, he's doing it because, she's missing a leg. Now we get it. He's not really the worst guy in the world. He's doing it for, another one of those
But
things.
still wasn't fixed. It
I know,
still
yeah.
had problems.
Yeah.
And Killian literally trying to kill Tony Stark there at the end wasn't going to fix it.
No, it's
So-
that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot
Like
of
I
sense.
said, it became more about him trying to steal the girl than him actually caring about Extremis.
Yes.
That was very odd to me.
Yes.
And I was hoping that maybe they should have mentioned the real Mandarin more. Like, maybe when Tony came and saw that he was an actor, he could have been like, you're not worried at all about the real Mandarin?
Yeah.
Because
Well, he
there is
didn't-
a real leader of the Ten Rings. The Mandarin, why would they totally invent the Mandarin if there wasn't some real behind it? They even used the Ten Rings flag symbols.
You have a good point. Like, why use the Mandarin at all if nobody believes he's real? You
They
can
could
just
have
make
invented
something else
anything.
up. Yeah.
Any crazy, culty villain.
Just keep poking the holes in it, I guess.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I mean, like I said, I think it's a fun movie, but I think it has a lot of problems.
Cyan Bloodbane says, as a veteran, I give it 4 stars. I have rarely seen a better example of PTSD portrayed for a truly wide audience. The plot did feel chunky or forced at times, but this was some of the best character development in the MCU. A story of unresolved trauma that flowed into Tony finding a way to ground himself from an unlikely source, even while the trauma remains to affect the character for years to come. It boils down to the old saying, war changes a man. On an aside, it has joined Die Hard and Lethal Weapon as one of my favorite Christmas movies.
Another one of those Christmas movies that's like not a real Christmas
like
movie.
how people like to say Harry Potter are Christmas movies because they do have
always
like
have
a
Christmas.
Christmas scene.
Yeah. Oh, those
Yeah.
aren't Christmas movies?
No. No.
No, I agree. It's a great portrayal of like war changes a man, right? Changes a
agree.
person. There's no
I
way
think
you
they
can go
handled
through.
him
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, again, this is the humbling of Tony Stark. This is him realizing like, what his weapons bring too. It's another step down that journey of like, realizing the horrors of war. He's always been the guy profiting off of it, and now he's in the trenches. Essentially, he's been shaped by war finally, not the sale of weapons.
Exactly. It harkens back to what Captain America had said to him in Avengers of, you wouldn't be the guy who lays down on the barbed wire and lets the other guy crawl over you. He kind of in Avengers, he turned into that guy.
Yeah.
He's the one who took the explosive through the wormhole and saved everybody at the expense of what he thought was going to be his life.
Yeah.
Now he's dealing with the consequences of that, and we know that this development that he had here is going to drive him to why he's creating the Ultron.
Yeah, I always love that line. I just cut the wire. It's not always that simple.
not.
He always thinks of things as practically and kind of like I would just find a way. And
But you
this is
can't.
starting to show him you can't always find a way.
Sometimes you don't have time to find a way.
Yes.
All right, the lone battle droid. Honestly, you could skip all the Iron Man sequels and not miss much. Like, I was binge watching all the MCU movies for Endgame. When I got to this movie, I remember Tony removed the shrapnel from his heart. It left little impact on me. And the other movies never acknowledged this development. Same when Tony blew up all of his suits.
Yeah, I will say that's probably the biggest issue with the film is like it does end with this very definitive like I'm not Iron Man and I'm moving on.
He picked up the screwdriver and looked at it fondly and took it
and he
with
does
him.
say I am Iron. I mean, it does allude to the fact that he's going to return, but you never see what actually brings him back. That's probably the big. He blows up all his suits. You're given this impression like okay, he's done, but not really done. You never see the part that brings him back. That's
Exactly.
probably the
We are
weakest part
missing
of
something.
Yeah, we're missing that middle section of the journey that actually why did he come back when he had kind of told Pepper I'm done and yet we knew he wasn't done.
D Flowers 30 says, one of the best things about Iron Man 1 was Tony Stark in the cave using his wits and intelligence to build the first Iron Man suit. Iron Man 3 took us back to that as Tony had to once again use his wits and intelligence and the help of a little kid to rebuild his suit. And while he's waiting for the suit to reboot, he goes to a hardware store, gets a bunch of regular tools to help him fight the bad guys, proving that he doesn't need the suit to be useful. And that plane scene is one of the best scenes in the entire MCU. I know a lot of hardcore comic fans hate it because of the big twist, but for me, I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, it does reiterate that Tony is a genius, that he is that Tony Stark is capable. It's not just he's in a suit and can do these things. It's
Because
the
anyone
guy.
could be in the suit.
Well, yeah, and we kind of see that in the movie how, they kind of take over the suit, and you're like, well, wouldn't there be more safety measures? Whatever.
I thought that immediately when I saw Iron Patriot's suit. And
Yeah.
later Tony, give me a suit. I want to be
Yeah,
give me
Rhodey
a
wanted
suit.
a suit,
And he's like, these are all keyed to me. I'm like, why didn't they key the Iron Patriot suit
yeah,
to at least certain government personnel aside from Rhodey if you wanted it to be...
something. Yeah, I don't know. They made it sound like it could easily change hands, whereas Tony's where it had to be keyed. Whatever. I'll let that
you
one.
can't get in my
go.
suit. It's keyed to me.
Yeah.
Into the Aether. For me, this movie is one of my guilty pleasures. Iron Man was always my favorite growing up, and the Mandarin was my favorite villain. I went and saw this movie in the theaters, and when the reveal was made that they butchered the character of the Mandarin, I almost walked out of the theater. I still give it 3 stars because of the growth in the character arc of Tony Stark, the acting from the boy who I can't remember the name of, plays his helper, in the inventive nature of all the suits, especially Tony coding the one suit to save Pepper instead of himself, is absolutely phenomenal. But it loses 2 stars on destroying one of the best comic book villains in my opinion. If Ben Kingsley had remained the Mandarin and they had somehow integrated the 10 rings of power into the story instead of having that twist, it would have been a 5-star movie for me. Well, they have, since Shang-Chi has come out,
Yes.
and gave us the rings of power and the Mandarin. But yeah, it was really weird to do a weird bait and switch at that time, and I wonder if the only reason they included so much in Shang-Chi was because of the fact that people were still not thrilled
Well,
with
we
this.
saw from the extra scene that they put into the Blu-ray release or whatever, the home release, that they... No, there is a real Mandarin, we're
And
sorry.
he kidnapped Ben Kingsley from jail and did have him...
Did have him in Shang-Chi, yes.
Which was...
Which was it's like
it made it feel less of a slight.
It's an acknowledgement that we know we screwed up, right? We understand that, other franchises don't, make such acknowledgement. Maybe they do. I don't know. We could get into Star Wars and, they bring Luke into the Mandalorian. That's kind of a way of saying, okay, we get you. We know a lot of you didn't like what we did with this legendary character. So it is nice when they, not directly, but at least indirectly acknowledge, like, we get you. We understand we pissed off a few fans.
Like when the
so
Snyder Cut got released?
Yeah, the Snyder Cut is another good example. Sometimes these companies do listen because, well, it's going to hurt their bottom line, but sometimes they do listen and actually try to make their fans happy. What a crazy concept that is.
I don't believe it. 1 Million Alpacas fell right in line with Hollywood's terrible trend of subverting expectations, became more important than actual plot.
Yeah, there was a string of movies, I think, that were trying to subvert expectations, and like we've been saying, it's in hindsight they probably would do it differently because it didn't really, I don't know, because it does make sense in the story when you realize that there is this terrorist plot, I should say, is kind of the cover,
right?
But you could have probably worked the movie a different way and had it be an actual terrorist plot and had the Mandarin be the Mandarin. I don't know, because as you were saying, like even the secret plot wasn't all that well portrayed and wasn't even all that exciting.
Bait and switch a villain, the villain that you're actually going to be fronting needs to be more of a presence than the fake one. Afterwards, once the layer's peeled away, your real villain needs to shine.
And Killian doesn't shine unless you count like glowing on fire.
It's like in Civil War. The fact that as soon as we realized that the real villain wasn't, the Russians are making a bunch of super... As soon as we realized the real villain was Zemo, that was an amazing moment. You realize everything he's done and what he actually accomplished. And you're like, he was a really A-tier villain. He didn't have superpowers or anything, but he became an A-tier villain.
A lot of people don't like Zemo in that movie.
I know people don't like Zemo, but they liked him in Falcon Winter Soldier. He danced.
Yeah, yes.
No, but I still think Zemo is like an A-tier villain.
I thought it was smart.
Because he was incredibly smart, and he worked in the background, but the result he made was so impacting.
Yeah.
It broke apart a team.
You didn't have any superpowers, but you defeated the Avengers nonetheless. That's the smartness.
He dismantled them.
The smartness of of Baron Zemo.
Yeah, he dismantled the entire team.
And eventually we'll talk more about Civil War because we are going to keep going. Maybe every week, maybe every other week. I don't know. We'll see how these go.
Yeah.
Probably every week.
Don't hold him to that.
I know, because, that was
We'll
a year
see
ago
how
we
it
started
goes
these.
because there's a lot going on
Yeah.
in the world
The
of Star Wars and pop culture right now.
Well, the popularity of the video always, if 5 people watch it, then we're obviously less likely to, make it a priority, to be completely honest with you.
yes,
What the audience wants is what
first
the audience
you need to
gets.
make a poll or something.
Yeah, I'll be putting up the next poll as soon as this video goes live, so go vote on that. I'll be putting it on the main channel just to, probably get more attention over there. But anyway, that's all we got for you this time, so take to the comments below. Tell us what you think of Iron Man 3, or tell us what you think of how this one ended up in 6th place out of 7 currently. And so leave your comments below. Let's talk some Marvel, and until next time, thanks for watching.